Hey Jews, today I want to talk a little bit more about time as one of the dimensions in our reality. Reality is 5-dimensional, 3 are physical, 1 is spiritual, and 1 is time, and this is information that we learn from the Torah. And we know that the only way that we're going to understand the Torah is if we make sure that our souls are clean, basically. So we have to be aware of our soul. We have to be living in a certain way in which we are aware and conscious. We're going to talk a little bit about consciousness again. So we have to be conscious of the fact that we have a soul and that the health of our soul is going to be determined by how much we practice the laws that God gave us to keep our soul healthy and pure, which we're going to need to have any understanding of our reality. Okay, so if I'm talking about things that you're not sure you're understanding, it may just be because your soul is not whole enough. Maybe you're not identifying with your soul as much as you should be trying to in order to understand the Torah, including if you're learning the Torah all the time, but you're not really understanding. And this is a practice. So we're all at a certain level. That's going to be directly related to how much we're learning and how much we're practicing. And that's just the information that our sages and prophets give us and rabbis. So we're going to talk a little bit about time. There's the past, the present, and the future in our reality. In the eternal reality that will only be one time, when it will all be the present. Like a lot of spiritual practices try to get us to reside basically in the present moment, not thinking about the past and being sad, not thinking about the future and being anxious or uncertain or scared, but rather just being in the present moment and understanding what's going on and knowing that that's a comfort. And some of the end time prophecies talk about that kind of understanding being the comfort, like in Isaiah 41, that's Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. Comfort, comfort, says our God, the God of Israel that gave us the laws of the Torah to help keep us conscious, to help keep our soul pure enough that we'll understand the wisdom, because God created this reality with wisdom. Chokhmah. So we're going to talk about Shabbat, especially also. I'm going to bear with me here while I'm trying to explain what I'm understanding and what's happening in our reality. So in the Talmud, in Brachot 57b, it tells us that Shabbat is like 1/60th of the world to come. That's Olam Haba. That's what we just said is going to be after this reality ends and time ends. And we're getting close. We're in 5,785. It's only going to 6,000. We're in the end times. That's why our reality looks the way it is. And if it's scary, if the future looks a little scary, or even the present looks scary, we need to reevaluate our information and our knowledge. We have to take the knowledge that we have of this reality and we have to understand it differently. How? With this information that's in the Torah. We have to understand it with wisdom and be wise with understanding. Okay? So we need to do that at all times in order to get to a point where we're just living in the present moment, because we know the entire story of what's going to happen. We actually know what's going to happen in the end. It's scary if you don't know what's going to happen, right? Anything could happen. Anything that's scary that could possibly happen could happen if you don't know. If you don't have any knowledge of how the world is going to end and when it's going to end and what the end times are. And that's all the wisdom that's in the Torah. So the present moment, so we're told that Shabbat is like one world of that feeling. 1/60th of the world to come. So when we keep Shabbat, when we do Shabbat, when we understand why we're keeping Shabbat and understanding what we're achieving for our soul to basically calibrate now your soul with the objective time, the objective reality. Because at some point when this reality ends, we'll be here in the present moment. It will feel like all Shabbat feels like. How does it feel? You should be practicing that every Shabbat. That's an opportunity for you to calibrate your soul and to get some sort of conscious idea, some sort of consciousness of what objective reality is. Meaning knowing that we're in the year 5785, we're in the end times. The whole how the rest of things happen from here on out until the world ends is written for us. It's written in all the prophecies of the end times, like Isaiah, and there's comfort. Be comforted, God's people, Israel, because we're going to something very, very good. We're going to a world that's all of truth. It's all objective reality, when we have an awareness of God, which is what we're supposed to be doing right now in this reality with our lifetimes. 70 years, 80 years, 120 years. We're supposed to be getting an awareness of this and practicing to have some sort of understanding of what the present moment actually feels like. It feels like Shabbat. It feels like a peaceful day. It feels like a day when we're connected to Hashem. It feels like a day where time doesn't really have any meaning. We don't have to go anywhere except for, sorry that I said it that way. We have certain prayers at certain times. And so you're still on a schedule, but you're working for the right things. You're focusing on the right things because you're understanding what you're doing. Why are you even praying? It's to gain more understanding. So, but we have to understand with wisdom and be wise with understanding. And we will never have any wisdom, says King Solomon, who had all the wisdom, was that if we don't obtain a fear of God in our lifetime, then we've basically wasted this opportunity because we haven't become aware of our souls. We haven't become aware of the objective present reality. We haven't become aware of God really. Even if we're doing all the stuff, we're keeping Shabbat, but we're not understanding that how it's connecting into our lives. Every day should feel like Shabbat. At a certain point, every day will be Shabbat. That's the point. So how are we feeling on every other days? Are we feeling anxious? Are we feeling, you know what I mean? Like that's how far away we are from the actual present moment and from our actual conscious level of awareness, of objective reality, a God awareness. That's the objective of the nation of Israel. That's why following these laws is the only way to achieve becoming Israel. So what we should be focusing on is the things that we know we need to do. We have to obtain humility. We have to understand the reason that silence is so beneficial to your soul. Silence. Because we have to also, one of the 10 things we say every day is like what Miriam did, which was she said stuff. And the rejection of physical pleasure. And to be happy with our situation. So when we look at the rejection of physical pleasure, for example, I'm going to tie this into Shabbat. We need to have some things that we think are really good and we enjoy. We're identifying more with the physical part of us, the body, when we're having physical pleasure. Like let's just take food, for example. And if we really, really enjoy food and we really like food, we're taking pleasure from this reality, which means we're identifying more with our egos or our personalities. What Rabbi Avigdor Miller called the little personalities, and less with our souls. So we're, as human beings, created as a combination of the body and the soul. But we're told that the soul is what's animating the body. The body alone is like an animal that has no soul, no divine soul that God put in the body. It's more like just an animal. So a body with no soul would be like an animal. But we're created with a soul in a body. So how much we identify with our soul is how much we are achieving our purpose in this lifetime. And for our lifetime is to obtain a consciousness of this situation and become conscious also of our reality, including the time, which is the end times. We're here, 85, very conscious of me. And to know that from here on out, till the end of time, to the redemption, everything's written down. We don't need to be anxious about the future, Israel. We know exactly what's going to happen. How are we going to understand? By purifying our soul, and by making sure that we have a fear of God, a fear to transgress these laws. These laws are not changing. We could not reform the Judaism. That was taking us off of our mission. That's what happened to elongate the time. There was a certain time that the redemption could have started from. Okay, and I think it was something like from 5,000 or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But it's like it wasn't too much before our actual time. But it's still over the time. We should have been able to become aware of what's happening in our reality because God left us all of the information with the prophets of the end time. So the end time prophets, which is why I've been talking about Ishaya and Hoshea ben Be'eri. And, so we can have some sort of reference point so we know where we are. And so that's something I'm trying to suggest that what we do is focus now on the bench point. So for example, we know that honey is 1/60th of the taste of manna. Now, manna is also the spiritual food that God gave us in the desert. That's also one of the 10 things we have to say every day. Why? To become aware, to become conscious of the fact that what we're eating here that tastes like honey to us, yummy, 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 and we're enjoying it so much. We like it. That we should become conscious and aware of the fact that it's literally 1/60th of the taste that the all spiritual manna that we could be having, even in this present moment, if we become aware. So don't identify with your ego and with your little personality. Don't over-identify with your body. Become more aware of your soul. Follow the laws. Gain some wisdom in order to understand reality. You have some knowledge. Now we need to obtain a more higher level of consciousness, including learning the Torah in order to understand, like they made sure in the book of Ezra, that everybody understood, which meant they translated it to Aramaic. Does everybody understand what Shabbat's all about? Yes. Are you sure? Let me explain it to you in your language. Let me explain it to you somehow that your mind will understand the importance of keeping Shabbat for all of the Jews. In order that we will look at our reality and all of the events that are happening, like the increase in anti-Semitism, like the war, like October 7th, like everything, that we'll understand what's happening in our reality based off of the wisdom of God, which is in the prophecies. Which is why we need to learn them and understand them as best that we can. So one thing that we can practice is making for ourselves a conscious benchmark of things that we know. For example, we know that honey is only 1/60th of the manna. Why would we have to recall the manna every single day? That one of the 10 things that Jews say every day, so that we can practice that. We can practice when we're enjoying our cake and we're enjoying it on a day that's not Shabbat, okay, then we're identifying more with the body. Let's try not to do that. Instead of focusing on how yummy the honey is, let's focus on how it could be 1/60th better than it actually is. So now we're aware of how actually discussing this world actually is. So don't enjoy it. Don't enjoy your captivity. Don't be like a Stockholm syndrome hostage. Just like we all want to see our hostages returned in this reality, all the Jewish hostages, including the babies and including all the elderly and all the civilians and everyone that nobody cares about. Okay, we see that in our reality. We see they don't care. So we are also like hostages to our body. We're also hostages to our ego and to this reality, when we should identify more with our souls and become more aware of the eternal presence that is happening now, that is the objective reality that will be the eternal reality. And Shabbat is like 1/60 of that. So that's how we have to start becoming aware. We have to practice. Awareness isn't going to just slap us over the head and we're not going to slip and fall in awareness. We have to become conscious. We have to practice. We have to use tools. We have to follow very specific ways to live our life so that our souls will have some sort of spiritual receptivity to the wisdom of God. Because when we do not do this, our souls become damaged. And then to the point where we could hate the Torah, we could hate the truth. We are so much identified with the animalistic part of us that we now hate the Torah. That can happen, and that has happened. That happened to me. That happened to a lot of people. But all you have to do is start becoming aware, start reading the Torah. It will heal you. Start praying, start using your mouth, your consciousness, your speech, and also don't use it. Understand the value, says our rabbis, of blessed memory, of silence. So please, I think, even, by the way, nobody has to know but you and God that you're going to start keeping Shabbat. You could just stop going out. You don't owe everybody a big explanation of what you're doing now when you're returning to God. That's between you and God. You don't need to go and now join a cult and dress a certain way. You need to start from where you are. That's what I understood from Hashem. From there, in Dvarim, he says, and from there you will seek me out with all of your heart and all of your soul, and you will find me. And that's one of the passages in the Torah that I connect so much with. And I literally wept when I read that, because I was so far away. I hated the Torah. I hated the Orthodox Jews. I hated everything to do with religion. I loved a different spiritual pathway. I loved what I was doing, how I was understanding, how I was living my life fully connected to my body and to my ego. And I was very not humble. And so, Baruch Hashem, there is a way back, and it's available to every single last one of us. We just have to look for God with all of our hearts and with all of our souls. And what does that mean? How do you understand that? That you don't change the Torah and make it about you. Well, God will understand that I'm just not ready to, cover my hair. And God will understand that I'm just not ready to get married, or whatever the case may be. It's just you're making those delusional calls on how you're going to live your life. You're making your own rules. And that's even idolatry. Now you're following your ego. Now you're following your body. Now you're identifying with the 70 other nations that literally want to annihilate us in every generation. So that's what Isaiah says also. He says that at the end of time, Israel, the nation of Israel, is like hostages that have Stockholm syndrome, that we're identifying with like Bidyuk, exactly who is enslaving us. And this is the freedom that we want. We want to identify more with our souls. We want to understand the wisdom and feel the presence of God in our lives, in the present time, at all times. That's the goal. So Shabbat is Shabbat is 1/60th of being there. We have to practice that.